The mucous membrane which is covering this, it shows a invagination inside. So this will be called as pharyngeal bursa. So this is pharyngeal bursa. This is nasopharyngeal tonsil. So this is tubal elevation, tubal opening, salpingo-palatine fold, salpingo-pharyngeal fold. Now, can you see here the clear-cut gap between the nasopharyngeal tonsil and the tubal elevation? So this will be called as fossa of Rosenmuller. Fossa of Rosenmuller or pharyngeal recess. So this will be called as fossa of Rosenmuller. The importance of this is the commonest site for cancerous growths in the nasopharynx. So we will label each component. So before that, sometimes what happens, see here, this is sphenoid, and you know in the body of the sphenoid there will be pituitary gland. So which holds a fossa, that will be called as pituitary fossa. There will be pituitary gland which is located. Sometimes what happens during the development of the pituitary gland from the roof of the primitive mouth cavity or stomatodium, what happens if the pituitary gland is not ascending properly towards the cranial cavity, sometimes it can lodge here only within the pharynx. So you can see sometimes there can be pharyngeal hypophysis here, or pharyngeal pituitary gland can be seen here in the roof of the nasopharynx. So this is one more feature occasionally which can be seen here. So now let us label each component. So here this is nasal cavity, superior concha, middle concha, inferior concha. Now behind the inferior concha, so around 1.25 centimeters behind the inferior concha, this is called tubal opening. So this is nothing but the pharyngeal opening of the auditory tube. So the name itself suggests auditory, means this connects, the other end will be opening into the middle ear cavity. So what is the function of this auditory tube, which is communicating the nasopharynx with the middle ear cavity? So whenever the air is entering in here, so through this tube it will go to the middle ear cavity. You know the lateral boundary of middle ear cavity is formed by tympanic membrane. So tympanic membrane is also exposed to the exterior. So on either side of the tympanic membrane, the air pressure will be balanced by this auditory tube. So that is the importance of this tubal opening. So now this bulge what you are seeing is called as tubal elevation. Tubal elevation. So that is produced by lymphoid tissue which is present here. So that lymphoid tissue will be called as tubal tonsil. Tubal tonsil. Now this is called nasopharyngeal tonsil. Now this depression what you are seeing will be called as pharyngeal bursa. Pharyngeal bursa. And here the clear cut gap what you are seeing here, so this will be called as fossa of Rosenmuller. So this is the commonest site for cancerous growths in the nasopharynx. Now, so this fold what you are seeing coming from the tube towards the soft palate, this will be called as salpingo. Salpinx means tube. So salpingo-palatine fold. Now this other fold is called as salpingo-pharyngeal fold. Salpingo-pharyngeal fold. So these are the features of your lateral wall of the nasopharynx. So nasopharyngeal tonsil. This nasopharyngeal tonsil is also aggregation of the lymphoid tissue at the junction of posterior wall and then the roof of the nasopharynx. So this is very prominently seen in young children, so up to 12 to 14 years of age. After that it regresses. Sometimes there can be this inflammation of this nasopharyngeal tonsil in children, and this will enlarge in size so as to block the posterior opening of this nasal cavity itself. In that cases, so the children will have difficulty in breathing and they will have a noisy breathing. So that condition will be called as adenoids. So that is about nasopharyngeal tonsil. So the mucous membrane covering the nasopharyngeal tonsil can invaginate that depression, you call it as pharyngeal bursa. Then 1.25 centimeters behind the inferior concha there is tubal opening. This tubal opening above and behind it will be covered by a bulge. So that will be called as tubal elevation, which is produced by the tubal tonsil. Then there is a clear cut gap between the nasopharyngeal tonsil and tubal elevation. So here this is called as fossa of Rosenmuller, commonest site for cancerous growths in nasopharynx. Then sometimes there can be additional pituitary gland which can be present here in the roof of the pharynx, that will be called as pharyngeal hypophysis. So these are the features of nasopharynx. So this nasopharynx anteriorly is in communicating with the nasal cavity, and below it is in communication with the oral cavity. Whenever the person ingests food, so the food entry to the nasal cavity, the regurgitation, it will be blocked by the contraction of this soft palate, and from behind there is the passavant ridge which is being produced by the palatoglossus muscle. They come and block the opening here, so that the food will not be regurgitated here into the nasal cavity. Now let us come to the features of the oropharynx. So you can see here, so oropharyngeal isthmus, so that leads from oral cavity to the oropharynx. So that oropharyngeal isthmus bounded by soft palate above, posterior 1/3 of tongue below, and palatoglossal fold in the front. When you come to the lateral wall of the oropharynx, you can see there is a triangular depression here which is formed by two folds coming from the undersurface of the soft palate. So one is here, that palatoglossal fold connecting the undersurface of the soft palate to the lateral border of the tongue at the junction of anterior 2/3 and posterior 1/3. This holds the muscle palatoglossus. So here palatopharyngeal fold, so coming from the undersurface of the soft palate towards the wall of the pharynx. So this holds the muscle palatopharyngeus. In between these two folds, you can see there is a triangular opening which is created, depression which is created. This will be called as tonsillar fossa, within which you will see the location of palatine tonsil. This palatine tonsil is also one of the aggregation of the mucosal aggregation of the lymphoid tissue, which you will see in the lateral wall of the oropharynx. Now, so tubal tonsil is there, palatine tonsil is there, nasopharyngeal tonsil is there, and when we spoke about the tongue itself, in the posterior 1/3 of tongue we had seen the lingual tonsil. So all these, they help in forming the Waldeyer's ring, so which guards the entry into the respiratory tract, entry into the digestive tract. So that is the importance of this Waldeyer's ring, which is being formed by this submucosal aggregation of the lymphoid tissue here in the entry to respiratory and entry to digestive tract. Now, so coming here to the lateral wall of the oropharynx, so you saw the tonsillar fossa and you saw the location of the palatine tonsil. Now let us come to the last part of the pharynx. So that is nothing but your laryngopharynx. So I said it will be anteriorly, it is in communication with the cavity of the larynx. So when you look at the cavity of the larynx, so the entry to the larynx is bounded by above, so upper border of the this epiglottis, one of the unpaired cartilages of larynx. So below it will be bounded by interarytenoid fold of mucous membrane. So that is the lower boundary. On either side you can see here epiglottic fold of mucous membrane. So this is the entry to the larynx. So that are otherwise called as laryngeal inlet. So behind this tube, which is extending till the lower border of the 6 cervical vertebra or lower border of the cricoid cartilage. So now this will be called as laryngopharynx. Now, so what are the features of this laryngopharynx? Here, just behind the entry to the larynx, that is laryngeal inlet, so you can see there is a depression. So this is the narrowest part. So what you see in the pharynx, so this will be called as piriform fossa. So this depression, so it will be seen just behind the laryngeal inlet. So we will draw one more diagram here. So here, this is the cavity of the larynx, which has got two folds, vestibular fold, vocal fold. So here, this is the cavity of the larynx. This is vestibule. This is sinus. And now this is infraglottic portion of larynx, laryngeal inlet. So now here, we know this vestibular fold, it is created by vestibular ligament. Similarly, vocal fold is created by cricovocal membrane. Cricovocal membrane. So I have put them as dots. This is vocal ligament, this is vestibular ligament. So vestibular ligament is formed by the quadrate membrane. Vocal ligament is formed by the cricovocal membrane. Now, so here, can you see this pouch-like projection here? So here, so this pouch, whatever you are seeing here, this is nothing but your piriform fossa. So here, This is the thyroid cartilage, one of the another unpaired cartilages of larynx. So thyroid cartilage here, and above there will be hyoid bone, and this will be connected by thyroid membrane here. So thyroid membrane, thyroid cartilage here, thyroid membrane, and then the hyoid bone. So the lateral boundary of the piriform fossa is formed by these structures, and the medial boundary is formed by the array epiglottic fold of mucous membrane. So this is your array epiglottic fold of mucous membrane, and now here lateral boundary is formed by hyoid bone, thyroid membrane, and then the thyroid cartilage itself. So this depression, whatever you are seeing in the laryngopharynx, so just next to the larynx you are seeing it, so that is laryngopharynx. So here this depression is called piriform fossa. The importance of piriform fossa is whenever any object, it enters through the oral cavity into oropharynx, because this is the narrowest space of laryngopharynx. If it comes and gets lodged here when it is entering into the laryngopharynx, it is very difficult for us to remove this. So the foreign bodies, so they cannot be easily removed from this piriform fossa, because this is the narrowest part of the pharynx here. So now, so this is about the importance of piriform fossa, which you see in the laryngopharynx. Now when you look at each part of the pharynx, each part of pharynx has got a special feature. So when we came to nasopharynx, we saw the nasopharyngeal tonsil, tubal tonsil, tubal opening, then sometimes pharyngeal hypophysis, all these are features. And then salpingo-palatine fold, which carries the levator velli muscle, and then the salpingopharyngeal fold, which carries the salpingopharyngeus muscle. So now here, so when you come down here, you saw the tonsillar fossa with the palatine tonsil in the oropharynx, and when you came to laryngopharynx, you saw the piriform fossa, which is supposed to be the narrowest part of the laryngopharynx. So like that, you have got three important special features along the lateral wall of three parts of the pharynx. So this is about the features along the lateral wall of the pharynx. So in the next class, we will be studying about the muscles, lymphatic drainage, blood supply, nerve supply, and applied anatomy of pharynx.